Hey guys, my name is Geoff. This is my 2000 BMW E46, powered by a 2JZ engine. This is a build breakdown. Starting off at the front of the car, we got the heart of the machine. It's a 2JZ-GE, fully built, bottom to top. It's got billet mains. It's got manly rods and pistons. It's 10-to-1 compression. It's got GSC cams, shimless buckets in the head. So this thing's got pretty much everything done to it that you can. Makes 800 horsepower on high boost. This weekend we're running 650, but super responsive setup. It's mated to a G-Force GSR transmission using a Tilton triple disc clutch that's 7 1/4 inches in diameter. At the very back, we got the Winner's quick change diff. Pretty solid driveline in this thing. All of the TIG welding and manifold was done by my buddy Corey Misko and his business Fresh Produce Manufacturing up in Michigan. Super clean. I wire the whole car, so I built the wiring harness for this. I do all the plumbing of the water lines, the wastegate lines. Anything that's not really welded, I've touched, and I also don't assemble the motor itself, but I'll put the motor in and all the ancillary components.
How'd you learn how to do all that?
I've just been doing it for a while and trial and error. I made plenty of mistakes over the years, so after a while you kind of learn the ropes. This is actually the first motor that I've ever built the wiring harness for, so it taught me a lot about how the sensors work and how the motor actually talks to the computer and how that entire system operates. So it was a great learning experience, and I'm glad it's still running, fingers crossed. So moving on to the suspension, obviously Koenig wheels in the front, GT radial tires. We're riding on BC Racing coilovers. We've got Z32 calipers in there, a little different what you would expect on a BMW, but I've used them in the past and I like how they feel, so I figured might as well keep it the same. Coming towards the back, as I mentioned before, this car has a Winner's quick change differential, which is pretty standard out here in the pro and pro spec field. That allows us to dial in the wheel speed for every track we're at, so we can be in the perfect gear no matter where we are, because these transmissions only have 4 speeds. And then obviously Koenig wheels in the back again. We've got the Z32 brakes in the rear. Something to note, I don't use a dual caliper hydro. I actually use a hydraulic handbrake that's plumbed into the main brake system. That keeps the unsprung weight pretty low, and that helps performance. You'll notice some of the top teams like RTR do the same thing. Moving on, pretty much another standard feature of any pro spec or pro level drift car. Got a rear mounted radiator in there. We move them to the back because it helps cool the car, gives us much more space in the engine bay, and it's a lot safer in a crash, so it's protected and you're not spilling coolant all over the track. I like to keep the back of the car pretty stock. Obviously these fenders made by 2F Performance are completely fiberglass, so everything here is fiberglass and can crumple in pretty far. So if we're hitting the wall out here, it's not upsetting the car a lot. It just lets us go super deep and stay committed, which is awesome. So we're not crashing. If you've ever played on a simulator, you know what I'm talking about.
You do a lot of simulator?
Yep, I drive on the sim a lot. I practiced here on the sim quite a bit, so I've actually got a server. It translates the driving really well. The only thing you got to adapt to here is the nerves and actually just being here.
And how old are you?
I'm 29 tomorrow.
Wow, happy early birthday.
Thank you, thank you. So this is my 10th year doing it. So when I started, I actually started on Forza Horizon. Never thinking I would actually get a drift car. I just thought it was cool. And then a year later, I picked up an S14, and you know, the rest is history. I recently built the sim. So that's something I built over the winter because I saw them taking off, and there's actually a real benefit because we don't get much practice out here. So any benefit that you can get, getting used to the track, even just what to expect to see when you're out there is so valuable. So
using Assetto Corsa?
Yep, Assetto Corsa. You can look up my server. It's called Donati Racing. Come and drive with me. I'm always on there.
You're gonna get a bunch of people crashing into you on your server.
Yeah,
now.
shout out. So this is the coolant expansion tank. So obviously the radiator is leaned back a little bit, and it's really impossible to get all the air out of it. So what we do is we put a tank up here that is the highest point of the car, because air bubbles are going to try to escape through the highest point. So what this does is, as you can see in here, there's a fitting welded to the very top of the radiator in basically the highest point, and then that goes up into that container, and it lets the air filter out to keep the car running really cool. So we never have any issues with overheating. This is another pretty standard setup you'll see on a lot of cars out here. Rad Dan is basically the one who I copied this from, so shout out him for that idea. And then this weird time capsule looking thing next to it is just our coolant overflow. So if the cap ever gets too pressurized, it'll go into the overflow, and then when it cools down, it'll go back in just like the car you drive every day. So moving inside the back seat of the car, we've got the fuel cell back here, the battery back here. Obviously, we already talked about the radiator. And then we've got the cool shirt. This is basically just cold water that runs through my shirt that I'm wearing, and it's like air conditioning when we're out on track. So that helps keep us cool and focused. All right, hopping in. This is my office. We've got, like I mentioned earlier, the G-Force GSR. It's a 4-speed. Pretty much the standard transmission used in all these cars out here. It's a dog box. So it's an H pattern, so we still have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, but it's very reliable, very strong, and like I said, it's just what works. Got my steering wheel, pretty run-of-the-mill there. I do like a bigger steering wheel than most people, and I like a leather steering wheel because I really like to be able to feed it through my hands without letting go. And my practice car, which is an Infiniti G37, I use the stock steering wheel, which is leather. So it's nice to have that continuity. We've got another PDM up here. There's 2 that run the car. They're made by ECU Master. They are controlled through the keypad here, which talks on the CAN bus protocol, which is a messaging protocol that basically allows you to send a lot of information over just 2 small wires instead of having a bunch of wires for everything you want to do. Got my digital dash that tells me everything I need to know. Not like I'm looking at it when I'm driving, but it's good to have that information. Fire suppression right here in case we have a fire. The stock pedals, that's an interesting feature of Pro Spec, is you have to use the factory steering column and the factory clutch and brake pedals. So you can't put in like a pedal box into the car. You have to run what came from the factory. My gas pedal though is actually from Chevrolet because I use an electric throttle body, and that's just what we chose to control it with. Really the last thing to note is the dash. Wanted to save some weight, so it's a fiberglass dash. It only weighs a couple pounds. As you can tell, a little floppy, but that's what we do for race cars. Well guys, that's been the tour of my E46. I really want to shout out Freedom Builders for supporting this round. They stepped up in a big way. Obviously Koenig Wheels, been supporting me for a long time, and I really appreciate that. BC Racing, Link ECU, GT Radial, and Formula Drift for having us out. See you at the track.